Even as a lifelong Xbox fan who's owned every console and loved their games, I really dislike Microsoft. Mainly because of the way they do business. I've covered this in several of my videos. Just a week ago, they raised the price of all their consoles, and now Game Pass Ultimate has jumped by 50%, from $19.99 to $29.99. This continues a trend of steady increases year on year. They tried to justify this new increase by announcing 45 new games, which essentially amounted to Ubisoft's back catalogue with titles like Far Cry 3, Watch Dogs 1, and multiple Assassin's Creed entries, games that are over 10 years old and available online for pennies. You might be thinking, adding a bunch of old Ubisoft games? That doesn't seem like a fair justification for a 50% increase, and you wouldn't be alone in that thought. Just minutes after the news broke, Xbox's website crashed as overwhelmed servers struggled to handle the flood of cancellation requests. By the time this video goes live, they may have rolled back the price like they did with The Outer Worlds 2, but $30 is still far from the end. They want to charge more than that, and one day they will. The reason being, a bad business strategy. Just 2 years ago, they bought ZeniMax, Bethesda, and Activision for $82 billion, immediately putting new entries like Starfield, Call of Duty, and the Oblivion remaster on Game Pass. Over the past decade, they've acquired around 40 studios, forced their games onto the Game Pass model, and shut down over 10 studios that didn't meet revenue targets. Truly an incredible business model. Just this year, Phil Spencer announced Xbox Game Pass hit almost $5 billion in annual revenue and that Microsoft had record sales. So why increase the price then? Well, because $5 billion might sound like a lot, but when you factor in the $83 billion they've spent, all of a sudden, it ain't that much. The truth is, they're not making enough to cover their investment, so there is only one place they can recoup those funds. From us. In this video, I'm going to explain Microsoft's recent history, their reliance on the Game Pass model, why it hasn't worked, and what I know they'll do in the future. So let's get into it, and as always, if you're new here and enjoy gaming news and analysis, please consider subscribing. So how did we get here? When Xbox shifted its strategy around 2017, the focus moved from outselling PlayStation consoles and towards building the Netflix-style subscription service that we know as Game Pass. To support that model, Microsoft went on an unprecedented spending spree, acquiring more than 20 studios in just a few years. This included Ninja Theory, Obsidian, Double Fine, and Playground Games in 2019, the $7.5 billion purchase of Bethesda in 2021, and most recently the $69 billion purchase of Activision Blizzard in 2023. This brought a wave of new exclusive titles from massive IPs like Call of Duty, Starfield, The Outer Worlds, and many more. You could have all these games for just one monthly fee. That's right, games that would normally cost $70 each were now available for just one monthly subscription fee of $14.99. It seemed too good to be true, and it actually was. It wasn't a viable business model and they began to take a loss, but they were okay with that, at least for now. Xbox's hope was that they could offer so much for such a low price that they could run out the competition as Sony and the others couldn't compete. They hoped that everyone would turn to Xbox and leave the PlayStation 5 in the dust. But some of their games were not as good as they'd hoped, and that didn't happen. Starfield didn't hit the heights expected, Avowed underwhelmed, and Black Ops 6 has divided fans. Even if they had performed well, the math wasn't mathing. And now they were in a situation where they were losing money with this Games Pass model and they needed to start to recoup on their investment. They had to up the price. Game Pass launched at $9.99 a month in 2017 and it rose each year until it got to $19.99 by 2023. A 100% increase in just a few years, but they still weren't making enough. So they needed to cut costs, remove staff, and shut down projects. Over the last decade, studios like Lionhead, Press Play, and Twisted Pixel were shut down. And more recently, in 2024, Tango Gameworks, Arcane Austin, and AlphaDog were all closed despite their pedigree. Even Roundhouse Studios was folded into ZeniMax Online, and in 2025, the initiative, the team once tasked with rebooting Perfect Dark, was dissolved. The reason for many of these closures was due to poor performance from new games released by these studios, but Even then, even if a studio released a top game, it still offered no guarantee. Last year, Tango Gameworks released Hi-Fi Rush, which received stellar reviews, massive player counts, and overall seemed a certified hit. Unfortunately, Xbox decided it was time to close the studio down. If a successful game doesn't work in this model, what game can? Tango Gameworks were doomed no matter what they did. ZeniMax has been developing a new MMO, Blackbird, since 2018, with over 300 staff working on it. Xbox head Phil Spencer reportedly loved the game, and the executives praised it during a March review, greenlighting further development. Just 4 months later, Microsoft abruptly shut it down. This came alongside sweeping layoffs across the studios, affecting Romero Games, Blizzard, Sledgehammer, High Moon, The Initiative, Rare, Turn 10, and Raven Software. In total, Microsoft has cut around 9,000 gaming jobs this year on top of the 8,500 layoffs last year that hit Arcane Austin and Tango Gameworks. In short, Microsoft bought many studios to fuel Game Pass and tried to dominate the market. Their plan to capture the player base failed, leading to massive layoffs, project cancellations, and studio closures, even for successful teams. And here we are today, where they have once again increased the price. The reason I'm so passionate about this is because this was always Microsoft's plan. They wanted to control the industry, buy up studios, lock their games to Xbox, and eventually leave players with no alternative. At first, prices were low to hook people in, and they knew that they would take a financial loss in the short term, but the long-term goal was clear. Once enough of the market was tied to Games Pass, they could raise prices as much as they needed. Want to play The Elder Scrolls 6? The Outer Worlds 2? What about the new Call of Duty? Well, it's Xbox or nothing. They knew they could put the price up by any amount at that point, as long as they were the only option. This is called a monopoly. But the plan failed. They never captured the market the way they hoped, and now they've been forced to close studios, lay people off, cancel projects, and share exclusives with PlayStation instead. Now, I'm no billionaire investor or business tycoon, but if I was presented with this model, I would ask, what happens if we don't dominate the market? What if people stick to PlayStation regardless of what the Game Pass offers? Or, God forbid, what if the games from these huge studios suck? What if it doesn't work? Well, it leaves us where we are today. Many of those studios who were bought out by Microsoft are forced to change their approach, and often for the worse. I believe they impacted The Elder Scrolls Online in a bad way. Video here. And when things go wrong, the studios are shut down for good. Rare used to release hit after hit back in the day. Now they rarely do. Lionhead Studios gave us hits like Fable. Now they don't exist. Tango Gameworks released Hi-Fi Rush. Now they're out of business. If these studios were all independent, all of them would still have a chance to release new games on all consoles. Tango Gameworks would most certainly have been working on a sequel to the successful Hi-Fi Rush. We'd all be looking forward to the new Blackbird MMO from ZeniMax, but since they're owned by Microsoft, they are closed down forever. If they can't have the games, no one can have the games. In their desire to dominate the gaming market and have all the exclusives, they did more damage than you ever could have anticipated. They closed studios and now no one gets to play Blackbird. No one gets to play Everwild. They have laid off thousands of employees and then have the audacity to post record profits without paying any respects to those who lost their jobs. In fact, Xbox executive producer Matt Turnbull suggested using AI chatbots like ChatGPT to help them get over their job loss. Cheers, mate. And now that their plan is failing and they're losing money, they're passing the cost on to customers by hiking the prices. This is like me saying, if you want to keep watching this video, you need to pay $30. I just spent $100,000 on new equipment. Would you? Of course not. You didn't ask me to buy it, and if you did, you probably would have said it was an unnecessary overpriced investment. It's not your problem. And this is essentially what Microsoft have done. They've been reckless with their spending, gambled too much on the Game Pass, and had no backup plan ready. The customer is not responsible for their bad business choices and shouldn't have to pay to fix it. And they have the audacity to post record profits at the same time as increasing the price. Now, the fact their cancellation page went down due to heavy traffic is a great sign, but I know some people will still defend Xbox, stating, well, it's still good value at $30, and it might well be, but if you think that $30 is the end price, you're not thinking straight. 8 years ago, Games Pass was $10 a month. Now it's at $30 a month. It has gone up consistently every single year, and they won't stop there. They need to make this model make financial sense, and $30 a month probably won't be enough. It never was going to be. They're just taking baby steps to get us there slowly, so it's not a bigger shock. They might drop it down after the backlash, but make no mistake, they will keep coming back and keep putting it up, because if they don't, the model collapses. The only reason they can do it at the current price is because Microsoft is literally one of the wealthiest companies in the world, so they can take the hit. Right now, many of us are struggling with the cost of living crisis. I mean, I work full time, I make 2 YouTube videos a week, and I still have to be very frugal. Gaming is one of the few escapes that many people have, but with rising prices, this hobby is becoming unaffordable. Gamers are growing tired of being treated like cash cows rather than valued customers, and this new increase amplifies the problem. Microsoft doesn't care about gamers, their staff, or even the games their studios make. They only care about money, and their decisions have been both reckless and unethical. So the reason why I wanted to make this video is to explain that this isn't the end. The fact that people are flocking to get refunds is a great start, as it shows that people have had enough. So for now, they might lower it or stop it at $30, but they will always return to trying to up the monthly fee. They will never stop until they reach their intended target. It was a low price at first to get people in the door, get them hooked, make them reliant on it. But once that happened, they were always going to increase the price, hoping that most would stick around. It might not be working now, but that doesn't mean they're going to stop trying. But here's the good news. We do get a say. Contrary to what some think, it's the fans who ultimately set the price. If most people refuse to pay the higher cost, the company has no choice but to lower it to avoid massive losses. The market is dictated by consumer demand. If players shrug and say, $30, still a good deal, Microsoft will see that as validation or even an opportunity to raise it higher. If cancellations skyrocket, that tells Microsoft they messed up. I did a video on this concept here, but the point is the original Xbox Game Pass was never going to work. They knew it was not sustainable. The price increase was always going to happen. The damage that Microsoft have done was always going to happen. Everything that has happened was inevitable from the moment they announced their plans, and the sad thing is, they knew it. From a business standpoint, I understand why they have to raise the prices, but from a consumer standpoint, I believe they're responsible for this mess that they've created, and if they don't learn from it, nobody wins. At the end of the day, Microsoft actions reflect a single-minded pursuit of control and profit at the expense of gamers, employees, and the industry itself. They gambled billions on acquisitions, pushed an unsustainable Game Pass model, closed studios, even successful ones, and laid off thousands, all while posting record profits and raising prices. This isn't a mistake or a sudden decision, it was always their plan. Hook players with low prices, dominate the market, and then cash in. The backlash we're seeing now, cancellations, criticism, and outrage, is proof that consumers still hold power. Microsoft may temporarily roll back prices, but the pattern is clear. They will always try to push fees higher to recoup their reckless spending. We shouldn't accept paying for their failed strategy. If enough players push back, we can make them rethink it. Otherwise, this cycle will continue, and gamers will keep bearing the cost of Microsoft's monopoly ambitions. But anyway, that's it for this one, but what do you think? Do you agree with my assessment? What's your thoughts on the price hike? Do you think this is just the start? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. Av out.